There was an eighth house. For more than a year, journalists and watchdogs tracking Joni Lamb's real estate empire counted 7 properties. 7 became the number. It was in every headline, every video, every comment.
The eighth house, what Daystar never wanted anyone to find. For more than a year, the number that defined public understanding of Joni Lamb's real estate holdings was 7. 7 properties, $11.7 million. That figure appeared in investigative reports, in commentary videos, in comment sections across social media platforms. It became the shorthand for the financial scale of what had accumulated around the Daystar presidency. 7 homes became the story. Then a watchdog organization went back into the property records one more time, and they found something that the county's own filing system had helped obscure. That discovery, an 8th property purchased in 1991, sitting quietly off the radar for more than 3 decades, is where this particular chapter of the Daystar story begins. But it is not where it ends, because alongside that hidden property sits a cluster of financial details that have received only passing mention in prior coverage. A disputed $10 million life insurance policy, a clergy housing allowance worth nearly $1.7 million that only became public through a lawsuit filed by a woman Daystar accused of blackmail, a salary document revealing compensation figures for every adult member of the Lamb family, and a $25 million loss connected to one of the largest financial frauds in recent American history, fought out in federal court for over 2 years with no public acknowledgement to donors. These are the parts underneath the headlines, the parts the organization did not want found. The house that nearly vanished. Trinity Foundation is a Dallas-based ministry accountability organization with more than 3 decades of experience investigating financial irregularities in religious organizations. In February 2025, they published a comprehensive accounting of Joni Lamb's real estate portfolio. At that point, the count stood at 6 properties, 4 in Texas, 1 in Georgia, and a beach condominium in Florida, with a combined estimated value approaching $11 million. One of Trinity Foundation's lead researchers, a specialist in open-source property and aviation records who also runs the organization's tracking project on ministry-owned aircraft, continued digging that same week. What he located was a property in Grapevine, Texas, purchased in 1991 by both Joni and Marcus Lamb together. The purchase predated the official launch of Daystar Television Network by 3 years, placing it in the era when the Lambs were still operating a single station out of Dallas. Joni Lamb still owned this property as of Trinity Foundation's 2025 investigation. What made it remarkable was not the ownership itself, but the fact that the Tarrant County property records had been formatted in a way that prevented the property from appearing in a standard ownership search connected to her name. Trinity Foundation has not alleged that Joni Lamb personally altered county records. What their documentation shows is that the listing did not match standard public record formatting, and that connecting the Grapevine property back to her required specialized investigative technique rather than the kind of basic search any member of the public could conduct. That discovery pushed the official count from 6 to 7, which became the headline number that circulated widely. What almost no subsequent coverage mentioned was how that 7th property was found, what it required to find it, or what it meant that a home purchased before Daystar had a name had been sitting effectively invisible to ordinary public inquiry for over 30 years. There is an additional detail about the more recently acquired properties, those purchased after Marcus's death in November 2021, that has received minimal attention. Trinity Foundation's research found no mortgage or financing records associated with any of them. Every post-Marcus property purchase appears to have been made in cash, paid in full at closing. No loans, no bank financing, outright purchases of multi-million-dollar properties by the leader of a ministry that does not publicly disclose its finances, while donors on fixed incomes continued sending monthly contributions. The life insurance question. Trinity Foundation's documentation of Daystar's financial practices includes references to a pattern in which Word of God Fellowship, the parent organization operating Daystar, has historically maintained large life insurance policies as part of its financial structure. The organization has documented prior litigation involving a $10 million policy held within that structure. The significance of this pattern for understanding the post-Marcus property purchases is more than theoretical. Trinity Foundation's working hypothesis, based on the documented pattern of large insurance holdings and the timing of the property acquisitions, is that the cash used for those purchases may have come from life insurance proceeds connected to Marcus Lamb's death. If that hypothesis is accurate, it raises a question that has never been put to Daystar on the record. Was the relevant insurance policy a private arrangement between Marcus and Joni, funded from their personal resources, or was it a ministry-owned policy with premiums paid from organizational funds, with Joni named as the personal beneficiary? The distinction is not minor. A private policy is an ordinary aspect of estate planning. A ministry-funded policy that channels proceeds directly into a leader's personal real estate portfolio is a materially different arrangement, one that would mean donor contributions effectively subsidized multi-million-dollar property purchases without donors being informed, because Daystar operates with church status and does not file a P. Oblique Form 990. No public document exists that would resolve this question one way or the other. Daystar has never joined the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability, the voluntary industry body that requires member organizations to publish independently audited financial statements. Membership is not mandatory, but it is a choice Daystar has had decades to make and has not made. The lawsuit that unlocked the records. Almost every concrete financial figure that has ever been reported about the Lamb family's compensation structure exists in the public domain because of a lawsuit filed by a woman named Jeanette Hawkins. Hawkins was Daystar's marketing director during the period when Marcus Lamb's extramarital affair became public knowledge in 2010. In the aftermath of that disclosure, Daystar's leadership accused Hawkins of attempting to extort and blackmail the ministry in connection with the affair. Hawkins denied those accusations. She maintained that she had been forced out of her position under false pretenses, that she had suffered significant psychological harm as a result of how the situation was handled, and that she had spent time receiving inpatient psychiatric care following her departure. She filed suit against Daystar in October 2011, alleging fraud. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed. Within a relatively short period, associated litigation from that era was withdrawn, with attorneys for departing employees citing theological objections to Christians pursuing disputes through secular courts. But before any of that occurred, Trinity Foundation filed to intervene in the Hawkins litigation specifically to obtain access to Daystar's sealed financial records. They succeeded. The documents that came out of that unsealing process became the foundational source for nearly every specific financial figure that has been reported about the Lamb fam. Eiley's compensation in the years since. Among the disclosures, Word of God Fellowship provided Marcus and Joni Lamb with a combined $1,671,324 in tax-exempt clergy housing allowances between 2002 and 2011. This was separate from their salaries. Under IRS regulations, clergy housing allowances are excluded from ordinary income tax, a benefit intended to help ministers afford housing. The records also showed that the Lambs purchased their primary residence in Colleyville, Texas in March 2004, meaning that for the remaining years of that documented period, they were continuing to receive a tax-exempt housing allowance after already owning and occupying a primary home. A woman whose reputation was publicly damaged by accusations of extortion ended up, through her attempt to defend herself legally, forcing into public view a financial structure the ministry had constructed specifically to remain outside ordinary public scrutiny. The salary document and the legal threat. In March 2025, an independent investigative outlet published an internal Daystar document identified as a final salary review for the year 2023. The figures it contained were notable, and the reaction from Daystar's legal team was immediate. The document showed Joni Lamb's compensation rising from approximately $436,000 in 2021 to roughly $1.48 million in 2022. That figure has been widely circulated. Less attention has been paid to what the same document revealed about the broader family compensation structure. Rachel Lamb Brown, Joni's daughter, was listed to receive a salary of $200,000 with a 5% increase planned for 2023. Her husband, Joshua Brown, was listed at approximately $125,000, representing a proposed 25% raise. Rebecca Lamb, Joni's younger daughter, received $100,000 in 2022 for her work as a Daystar contributor and podcast host. Rebecca's husband carried the title of Israel Liaison, Producer, and Director of Estate Planning, with compensation of $185,000 and a 5% increase projected. That last title, Director of Estate Planning, in the context of a ministry whose own estate and inheritance arrangements would subsequently become contested legal matters, is worth sitting with on its own. The collective picture is of an extended family drawing six-figure salaries across multiple roles within an organization that makes none of this information voluntarily available to the public through standard non-profit disclosure channels. When the salary document became public, Daystar's attorneys sent correspondence to the outlet that published it, claiming the figures were inaccurate, asserting that Joni's compensation was in fact below 7 figures, and demanding that the salary information be removed. They alleged the document had been obtained improperly. 4 days after the original reporting appeared, a separate 10-page legal demand was sent characterizing the entire investigation as a bad faith smear campaign and calling for full retraction of all related coverage. The outlet's legal counsel reviewed every specific claim in that demand letter and concluded that Daystar had not identified a single factual inaccuracy in the reporting. Nothing was retracted. The document remained published. A ministry whose internal salary figures became public did not respond by voluntarily providing accurate figures. It responded by threatening the journalist who published the figures it claimed were wrong. $25 million and the crypto connection. Word of God Fellowship, the corporate entity that operates Daystar, has been engaged in active federal litigation for more than 2 years over a $25 million loss connected to Silvergate Bank, the cryptocurrency-focused financial institution that collapsed in 2023 amid the broader fallout from the IMPI. Ocean of the FTX exchange. The nature of the loss is more specific than the headline figure suggests. According to reporting by Ministry Watch, which has tracked the litigation closely, Silvergate did not simply hold the ministry's deposits in a conventional account. The bank used those deposited funds to participate in lending activity connected to the financial infrastructure that FTX depended upon. The ministry's $25 million was not passively sitting in an account at an unlucky bank. It was, through Silvergate's own operations, deployed into the ecosystem surrounding one of the largest financial frauds in recent American history. Silvergate's legal defense in the litigation has essentially argued that depositors assumed the risks inherent in maintaining a relationship with a bank whose client base included major cryptocurrency entities, and that the bank's own collapse does not create direct liability for client losses tied to FTX. This litigation has been in process for over 2 years. In that entire period, Daystar has made no public statement to donors explaining that a portion of contributions received from viewers was caught up in the FTX collapse. No on-air disclosure. No letter to ministry partners. No acknowledgement on the Daystar website. The organization's donors, including elderly viewers on fixed incomes, have continued giving without being informed that $25 million of what they contributed is currently the subject of federal litigation arising from one of the most widely covered financial frauds in modern history. What the numbers actually mean. A pattern of choices is itself a form of information. An organization can choose church status over standard nonprofit structure. It can decline membership in the voluntary accountability body that would require audited financial statements. It can decline to file the public financial disclosures that comparable organizations submit. It can respond to published salary documents. Not by providing accurate figures, but by threatening legal action. It can lose $25 million in a high-profile financial fraud and say nothing about it to the people whose contributions funded those deposits. None of these choices, taken individually, necessarily constitutes illegal conduct. Church status is legal. ECFA non-membership is legal. Choosing not to file a Form 990 when church status permits that exemption is legal. Each of these is a lawful decision, but taken together across decades from an organization that simultaneously asks viewers to include it in their wills and to trust that their giving is being managed with integrity. These choices describe an institution that has consistently prioritized its own freedom from scrutiny over its donors' ability to verify how their contributions are used. The eighth house was found because a full-time property investigator went back into the records one more time and knew what to look for. The housing allowance became public because a woman accused of extortion filed a lawsuit that forced sealed records open. The salary figures became available because a journalist refused to delete a document when threatened with legal consequences. The FTX connection is documented because an independent watchdog organization tracked the litigation. None of it came from Daystar. None of it was disclosed voluntarily. Every piece of it had to be found, demanded, or extracted over the objections of an organization that, by its own repeated choices, made finding the truth as difficult as legally possible. That is not how a ministry committed to transparency transparency and donor accountability operates. It is how an institution committed to protecting itself from scrutiny operates. And as Daystar moves forward under new leadership, with its board undisclosed to the public and its founding president now gone, every element of the financial architecture described here remains fully intact. The faces will change. The structure will not, unless someone forces it to.